Hi class! Welcome back. Now we are going to have another new lesson for today. Okay, in our previous lesson, in Psychological Association of the Philippines Code of Ethics Part 2, we were able to discuss the general ethical standards and procedures on resolving ethical issues. Now, we are going to have the Code of Ethics Part 3, the general ethical standards and procedures, specifically discussing on competencies. Now, let's go to the next page. Alright, to continue, now we are going to focus on the competence or the competency. So just to give you a brief background, competency entails the knowledge, skills, and abilities that a professional has or have. Okay, so the knowledge entails to its educational background, okay, or the trainings he or she has as a professional. For example, as a professional in or as a registered psychometrician or a registered psychologist. Okay, so that's on the knowledge. So the knowledge pertains to the educational background, like MA, a requirement of MA and a licensure exam for the psychologist, and a requirement of BS or AB psychology as a requirement to become a registered psychometrician, and also, of course, taking the board exam as well. So the knowledge there is the educational background and also the licensure examination. And then we also have the skills, like the skills on how to actually make a test or administer a test, and also the abilities on future events in case a psychologist or a psychometrician is needed, their future competencies that can be used, or their abilities as a psychometrician and a psychologist. Now, let's talk about how to handle the boundaries of our competence if ever, or in case we are already a psychologist or a psychometrician in the future. So now let's have letter A, boundaries of competence. Number 1, we shall provide services, teach, and conduct research with persons, populations in areas only within the boundaries of our competence, based on our education, training, supervised internship, consultation, thorough study, or professional experience. So in here, we shall provide only the competencies that we have, okay? So, for example, you're a registered psychometrician, only the competencies as a registered psychometrician are the tasks that you should have or that you should do. So one of the tasks of a psychometrician would be scoring and interpreting scores of a psychological test. Now, analyzing and explaining the test and diagnosing would be the role of a registered psychologist. So as a registered psychometrician, it is our duty to know that we are only limited to that specific task, which is administering the test, scoring it, and interpreting it. Number 2, we shall make appropriate referrals except as provided in Standard A.2, providing services in emergencies, where our existing competencies are not sufficient to ensure effective implementation or provision of our services. So the point of number 2 is we shall make appropriate referrals. That means that if it is no longer part of our competencies, we should refer it to others. So, for example, you are asked, you were hired as an intern in a psychological testing center. So you are a registered psychometrician, and you are administering tests. However, the client asked you to analyze and help her diagnose her condition, psychological condition. So since it is no longer part of your competency, you should refer it to, of course, the one who is responsible for it. For example, we have the direct our direct supervisor, which should be the psychologist, a registered psychologist, or if ever, you can just tell them to consult to a psychiatrist. All right, so we shall make appropriate referrals, and also it also depends on what kind of referral we are referring to. So again, the main point of this part, or number 2, would be make appropriate referrals. Number 3, when we plan to provide services, teach, or conduct research involving populations, areas, techniques, or technologies that are new to us and are beyond our existing competence, we must undertake relevant education, training, supervised experience, consultation, or thorough study. So, for example, you are asked. Okay, so for example, you are asked to teach. So you're a graduate in BS or AB psychology and already took the board exam, and you wanted to teach college. So that's one of the services that we can provide. Okay, so you wanted to teach in college. You already have your psychometrician board exam. However, since it's a teaching facility, in an education or in any other related organization, you should take relevant education, training, and supervised experience, or OJT, consultation, or thorough study to remain or to continue your position. Okay, so for example, as a teacher, so you wanted to teach in college. So for you to continue on teaching, you have to go and take your master's degree. So in here, we have to continue our competency. We have to continue and develop our competency by going through relevant education and training. Number 4, so as not to deprive individuals or groups of necessary services which we do not have existing competence, we may provide the service as long as A, we have closely related prior training or experience. So in our field, especially here in psychology, here in the Philippines, mental health is one of now the booming and most trending advocacy here in our country. So since there are a lot of individuals who are now ready to speak, and who would like to have services, not, or go through services with you, because you're also a psychology and you're an advocate of mental health. Yes, you advocate mental health. There are individuals who would like to have your services. So some individuals might be suicidal and would like to talk to you. All right. So and also there are some individuals who are in urgent need for someone to talk to. So you as a BA psychology student or AB psychology student can provide services. However, this should be closely related to your prior training or experience only. Alright, so make sure that before giving an emergent service to that person, you already experienced it prior to that. So, for example, the person is asking you for counseling. So make sure that you already experienced counseling to a real life person that is not in class, or that's already in the field. Okay, so make sure that you already experienced that, because we should also avoid depriving services to them, especially those who are in need. Letter B. we make a reasonable effort to obtain the competence required by undergoing relevant research, training, consultation, or thorough study. So in here, of course, if in the future you are planning to practice uh, becoming a registered psychometrician, or you wanted to be a psychometrician but still waiting to have your board exam, it is right and ethical for you to give an effort and obtain the required license. Number 5. In those emerging areas in which generally recognized standards for preparatory training do not yet exist, but in which we are required or requested to make available our services, we shall take reasonable steps to ensure the competence of our work and to protect our clients, our patients, students, supervisees, research participants, organizational clients, and others from harm. So here in the Philippines, it's the mental health law was just recently passed, so it wasn't. It's barely new in our country, and with that, since it's just new, the services here in our country are also new. Okay, so in case in the future, uh, you already graduated and are asked to give services like, for example, counseling, it is required that while you are still in the position, or you have plans to continue on practicing that specific job, it is really necessary for you to undergo preparatory training. All right, so if ever that training do not exist yet, so you have to make ways to have the necessary background to continue on the services that your organization or you provides. Okay, so that also includes attending international conferences, getting certificates from top universities across the world. Number 6. We shall be reasonably familiar with the relevant judicial or administrative rules when assuming forensic roles. Okay, so in the future, there are forensic psychologists or forensic related jobs in the future. So in here, if ever your opinion will be asked in a forensic investigation, and you hold it, of course, the title or the background as psychologist or a psychometrician, you have to be very specific and you have to know the legal rights, also the psychological background in the situation that might exist or is existing. Okay, so before giving a forensic role or an opinion on forensic investigations or phenomenon, you have to make sure that you're equipped. Okay, so we don't want to put a psychology name incompetently. Okay, so make sure that before giving forensic roles or opinions in the future, or as a psychology student, or as a registered psychometrician or psychologist, you have to make sure that you are equipped on the laws and regulations in the country and also on the existing phenomenon. Letter B. Providing services in emergencies. So like what I've mentioned in the previous slides, there are emergencies in the future. Okay, so as in the future, as a registered psychometrician or a psychologist, of course, we're already licensed and recognized by the Philippine Regulatory Commission to provide services you're legal to provide services, in the future there might be events where emergencies may exist. Okay, so here are the ethical standards and procedures that we should take consider of. First one, we shall make available our services in emergency situations to individuals for whom the necessary mental health services are not available, even if we lack the training appropriate to the case, to ensure these individuals are not deprived of the emergency services they require at that time. However, we shall immediately discontinue said services as soon as the emergency has ended, and ensure that appropriate competent services are made available. Okay, so let's have an example. All right, so to explain this a bit easier. Okay, so let's have an example. So you have a friend who has suicidal thoughts. Okay, so you, as a BA psychology student or AB psychology student, or perhaps a registered psychometrician or a registered psychologist, since we are part of the mental health law here in the Philippines, it is necessary for us to provide emergency services. Okay, so emergency services, that depends on our competencies as well. So for example, you're a registered psychometrician already, and your friend is asking for counseling because your friend has this intrusive thoughts of killing himself. So as a registered psychometrician, the best thing that you can do is first, of course, provide counseling. All right, so even though you are lack of the training of the counseling part, you have to make sure that the individual or that person is safe. Okay, so because we don't want to deprive that person of psychological services, because that's part of our competencies to provide emergency services. All right, so you have to provide counseling to that person, and once the coast is clear and everything might the situation sounds or looks clear already, based on your judgment as well, that's the time that you shall cut the services, the emergency services, and then refer it to the rightful person whom the services is more appropriate for, like the psychologist, a registered psychologist, or a psychiatrist. Okay, and also you have to make sure that they will that they have the right person, okay, and that person understood the situation that your friend is going through. Letter C. Maintaining competence. We shall undertake continuing education and training to ensure our services continue to be relevant and applicable. So once you already have your license and you already are practicing in the field of psychology, you shall have or you shall continue on learning. This is to provide timely products and services to our clients. Okay, so that's why after having your licensure exam, after receiving your card, your card that says that you're already a registered psychometrician or registered psychologist, you are required by the Philippine government to attend and to gather CPD points before renewing your license. Okay, so that's actually one of the points why it is necessary to have CPD points. So in here, that's one of the ethics of being a registered psychologist or psychometrician in the future. That is letter C, maintain your competence. Letter D, basis for scientific and professional judgments. We shall base our work upon established scientific and professional knowledge of the discipline. So there are a lot of here. See also standards 2.A, E, boundaries of competencies, 8.B, A, informed consent to therapy, V.A, avoiding of false deceptive statements, 5.C, rather, 5.C, workshops, seminars, and non-degree granting educational programs. 7.E, interpreting assessment results. 7.G, explaining assessment results. 8.F, competent practice. 9.C, accuracy in teaching. So in here, the basic point of this letter D is that we have to base all of our work, okay, based on scientific and professional knowledge. Okay, so and here we shall not only base our knowledge from the internet saying psychology says, okay, we shall base our services and knowledge depending on the scientific investigations and research and theory done by, of course, the psychology scholars across the world. Letter E, delegation of work to others. In cases where we shall have to delegate work to employees, supervisees, or research or teaching assistants, or when using the services of others, such as interpreters, we shall take reasonable steps to, okay, let's go to the next page, avoiding delegating such works to persons who have multiple relationships with those being served that would likely lead to exploitation or loss of objectivity. So when we are going to delegate some of the tasks that are limited to our competencies, we have to avoid delegating it to people that the chances of exploitation and subjectivity is very high. So that means that some of these people might be the relative, where the subjectivity is, subjectivity is very high, or a co-professional that is very much related to your client. Okay, so for example, your client is your friend's cousin. So you should not delegate your client to your cousin that is also, to your friend that is the cousin of your client that is also a registered psychologist. Okay, so in here we have to avoid multiple relationships, because in that, because of course we have the therapist patient relationship. Okay, so we have to stick on that, only the therapist and the patient. That should only be the relationship, no lover or friends or whatever. You can be friends, of course, as therapist and patient, but of course, there are limitations. So going back, in number 1, it states here that we have to avoid delegation of tasks, specifically clients, and the information of the clients to someone where multiple relationship can exist. Number 2, authorize only those responsibilities that such persons can be expected to perform competently on the basis of their education, training, or experience, either independently or with the level of supervision being provided. So in here, if we are going to delegate, we have to make sure that that person would have at least same or at least have a background of what you're doing. So for example, you're a registered psychometrician, and what you do is you're administering and scoring and interpreting psychological tests. So what you're going to do is, if you are not available and you have to delegate the administering part, you have to delegate it to someone who has at least the same background. So for example, someone who graduated BS Psychology or AB Psychology would qualify that position. So you have to authorize, or you have to delegate that specific task to those individuals who are also have the same education and training or experience on the said task or job. Number 3, see that such persons perform these services competently. So once you delegate your tasks to others, you have to make sure that the task being done is competent and is competently done and administered. Okay, so we don't have to shoot the bullet and forget about it. We have to guide them if necessary for them to administer it correctly and competently. Letter F. Personal problems and conflicts. Number 1. We shall refrain from initiating an activity when we know or anticipate that there is a substantial likelihood that our personal problems will prevent us performing work-related activities in a competent manner. So in here, the main point of number 1 is that if you, as an individual, also a person and also a registered psychometrician or psychologist, if you experience or in an event that you have personal problems and conflicts existing within you and uncomfortable to work, you have to initiate or you have to refrain from doing activities that might trigger you and your mental health as well. All right, so your personal problems should be resolved, or hopefully should not interfere your professional work. All right. Number 2, when we shall become aware of personal problems that may interfere with performing work-related duties adequately, we shall take appropriate measures such as obtaining professional consultation or assistance and determine whether we should limit, suspend, or terminate those work-related duties. See also Standard 10.10, Terminating Therapy. So in here, as mental health advocates, so we should also be aware of our personal conditions, mental health conditions as well. So if ever our mental health or our personal problems may interfere our work, it is our responsibility to consult, ask for professional help and assistance from others, okay? And take necessary steps if necessary, or yes, if really required, for you to limit some tasks, suspend or end it or terminate this work-related tasks that may interfere or may trigger your mental health problems or personal problems as well. All right, so that is for our Psychological Association Code of Ethics Part 3, Competencies. So if you have any questions for me, please let me know in our chat box, FB Messenger chat box, and I'm happy to answer your concerns. So thank you very much. I'll be seeing you again next time. Bye for now.